Thank you for being here so much. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Stop laughing at me. We've admired your brand for so long, and sort of looking at that video, people think it's product, and it really is people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you talk about sort of what the overview of that organization and the reach and why it was such a mission-based endeavor?
Yeah, it is. So the professional skin therapist, which is what Dermalogica calls people that other people call estheticians or beauty therapists maybe, or cosmeticians, but we have our own language because as a brand, I believe strongly that a brand has its own language and its own sort of behavior and personality. So people saw the professional skin therapy, the salon channel, as a channel of distribution. So they would talk about, the department store channel and the salon channel. And it's not a channel, it's a community. It's people. And so when we set about developing Dermalogica, we never saw it as a channel. We said these are individual entrepreneurs, these are salon owners, and we have to reach them as a community, and we have to bond and connect them like a community. And they are self-named, they call themselves a tribe. They call themselves the Dermalogica Tribe, and they say things like we bleed grey, and they post it all on, on social media and have done, for years. It's this incredible connection. And the reason that was so profound in the industry is because they were all separated and disparate. Every salon was independent and they never connected with each other. And so most skin therapists are working in a small room, 8 foot by 10 foot, somewhere, and the busier they are, the more they're in the room, unless they are connected to anything else. So we literally set about establishing a community and a group and a connectiveness. And we have a product. And I think it's the best product in the world, but you would expect me to say that. So that's a given. I believe that your product has to be great to have longevity. And so, 36 years leading the industry is a testament to that. But it's not about the product, it's about the people, the small entrepreneurs that built it.
And you're hearing the same thing over and over from the successful people we brought in here about building a community. Even people who are in a startup phase, says that's the most important thing to the success of their company. Now, it's an easy word to throw around. It's a very hard thing to build unless you sort of really strike a chord with them. We want to cover 3 things before we let the students ask you questions. So first, it's a little bit about your background, family, history, and then the opportunity recognition rise of Dermalogica. And then we'll talk a little bit about Fight and Found LA, and then we'll turn it over to them. Is that okay?
Yeah, great.
All right. So let's start early on. Where were you born? And so tell us a little bit about your family, your sisters, and your parents.
Okay. And I brought some slides, screens, to illustrate some. Yeah, okay, good. That's me in the front. I know. I was 3 years old, and I was wearing a turquoise cardigan that my grandmother knitted that was really itchy, and my mother was telling me to sit still. I remember that photograph. I was born in Edinburgh, Scotland. I'm the youngest of 4 girls, and this photograph was significant, very significant to me, because I know exactly when it was taken. It was taken about 2 months after my father died. My mother was widowed at age 38 with 4 girls to raise. And she hadn't worked since she got married. She was a qualified nurse, but when she got married in 1944, once you married, you were required to leave your job as a nurse. It was the same with teachers, and it was the same until 1967 in the UK, and a little later than that here in the United States, that when a woman married in those professions, they had to give up their job to a single woman, because it was assumed that once you married, you no longer needed that job. So my mother, who hadn't worked in all these years, had to go back to work because there was no money left. My father died very unexpectedly, very suddenly. And she didn't even know how to drive. She learned how to drive so that she could drive his car and get to the hospital to work. She worked night shifts. She worked from 7 in the evening till 7 in the morning, and my sisters, my older sisters, took care of me. My older sister, Diana, who's on the far right, was 15. I think she looks about 32, but she was actually only 15. And so my mum just, cobbled together with my 3 sisters and myself a way of taking care of us. She kept our family together. And this was obviously a pivotal moment in my life. But one of the reasons it was so impactful for my sisters and myself, apart from the obvious, was my mum said to each of us, you better learn how to do something. And those 5 words changed my life. She said, you must have a skill, you must have a skill set in your hands. That if anything like this happens to you, you must be able to provide for yourself and your family. What would I have done without my training? I can hear my mum's voice saying it. My mum passed away in 2001. And those 5 words meant that we were all destined to get some kind of skill set training, vocational training. None of us went to university. I have no college degree. I have no formal training in business. I'm not a cosmetic chemist. I've been a skin therapist my whole life. And so it was a testament to knowing how to do something. The other thing that I always say, only because it is deeply reassuring to my insecure self inside, is that I can always work because I will be able to get a job in a salon. And anywhere I go, even if it's a really small town, anywhere on the planet, I always have a quick look around to see that there's a salon. And I'm always deeply relieved because I think, oh good, okay, great, because I could get a job there and I could work. And especially because I can wax a bikini line in under 7 minutes. It's a highly saleable skill.
I'm wondering if the same applies today, because here we are in a college that's very difficult to get into, and these students are they're spending a lot of money, their families are spending a lot of money to go here.
Yeah.
And the idea of sort of vocational training, being able to have a skill that you can sell and deliver value to somebody that they'll pay you for, it really still applies.
Yeah.
I was a lawyer and always felt like if everything really went bad, I could go back and sell time and bill people. A student just came to me last week and was going into accounting. I'm like, that's a great thing. You can always make money. So I think it's something that really, even though times have changed somewhat, that the message is the same. It's not the degree that's important. It's that you have some skills, right?
Yeah, it's that you know how to do something. I went to a presentation a couple of years ago in New York, and there was a professor from Stanford and a professor from Brown and I think Duke. And they started the presentation by saying that the most highly educated country in the world was South Korea. So I'm only repeating this. I don't even know if that's a fact, but I should just tell you what they said. And they said they had more PhDs amongst them than any other country in the world. And it took an average of 2 years to get a job. And I sat there thinking, God, I'm so bloody glad I don't have a PhD then, because I'd need to work way before then. So I know that sounds a bit frivolous, but I will tell you that now, I actually think a skill set that's where the jobs are too. I mean, I'm not encouraging any of you to drop out of college, but I do think that there's a huge gap in this conversation around skill set training. It's not discussed in middle school, it's not discussed in high school. It's sort of like this missing conversation, and there's an expectation that everyone will go to university. And I think that's a great expectation to have, but there are clearly many people that won't go to university for many different reasons, and I wonder what conversation is happening for them and when is it happening, because it needs to happen earlier rather than later. In our industry, there's a 40% job growth predicted between now and 2022 by the US Department of Labor. So the demand far outweighs the supply. And I also think that as we go forward with technology, etc., it's just expanding and booming, what are human beings going to do? And I think that a great many of those jobs are going to be humans being more human. What are we going to do that a machine or a robot or a bot or an AI can't do? And I think that, I'll tell you, definitely bikini line waxing is going to hold steady. So I think it's a conversation that we should have, and I think the reason it doesn't happen is quite honestly, there's an elitism about it. So I think we just have to sort of get rid of that and start having the conversation so that we can have more job creation amongst all sectors of the community.
Particularly with sort of the squeezing out of a real middle class in this country, that there are very good jobs out there that pay well, that that some even have pensions still if you're part of a union, and there's a lot of ways to have a good life.
Yeah.
So that's important to know. So I was excited to see that I think when you were 8 or 9, you moved to England, and the reason why is because I have friends in Bournemouth and Poole, and that's where you were.
Wow, yeah,
it's like the one place I have friends, and so I go over there pretty frequently. It's a beautiful place. It's sort of like it's almost like Manhattan Beach of England. It's like a really great little seaside town with some beautiful homes. And
Poole is the premier resort of the English Riviera, which you never knew that England had a Riviera. But we have 7 miles of golden sand, and we have sand, unlike Brighton, that has pebbles. So when you plan a Riviera vacation in England, please come to Bournemouth and Poole. We'd love to have you.
It is a beautiful place.
Yeah.
So you moved there. Your family moved there at 8 or 9.
Yeah, my mum moved there to nurse her father, who had Parkinson's, and she wanted to be there for the last year of his life to nurse him. And so she moved. My 2 older sisters at that stage, Diana and Sally, were in nursing school. They followed my mum into her career, and my sister Judy, who's on the far left, Judy and I were still in school, and we moved with my mum to the South Coast.
And it sounds like your mother's message sunk in. At 13, your first job, what did you do?
I was still in school. I don't really think I dropped out of school at 13. But you had to be 15 and a half to work legally a full day. So I needed to get a job because there was no spare money in our house. So I wanted to go to the movies, and I wanted to go out with my friends. So my friend at school told me on good recommendation that the local hair salon would employ you underage, which was true. So I went in my school uniform, and I asked them if I could get a job working on a Saturday. And they said, they asked me if I had any experience, which was very bizarre because I was 13. I'm like, oh my God, they must have 7-year-olds in the back there somewhere. So I said, I had no experience. I just said, I'm really good at doing the laundry. I'm excellent at washing towels, and I can go and get everybody's lunch. And I don't mind anything I have to do, I'll do it. And I just need a job. And they gave me a job. And so I started doing the laundry and cleaning up. I couldn't be seen out in the main floor of the salon because I was underage. And then when I was 15 and a half, I got the big promotion to shampoo girl. That was my official title. And I could shampoo clients' hair, and that was huge. That was my big career move.
It is good advice whether you're 13 or 22 to just say I can do anything and then be confident about it that I can deliver some value.
Yeah, because you'll figure it out. I took a job in South Africa that came with a car, and I couldn't drive, and they said it does come with a car, and I said fantastic, and they said, do you have your driving license? I said absolutely, of course. I did not have a driving license, and so I had 3 weeks to learn how to drive, pass the test, and get that car, which I did, because listen, you can figure it out if you have to, right? Whatever it takes.
That's very true. So you trained in Bournemouth and Poole. You moved to London. I think your job for a job as a makeup artist.
Yeah, I worked for Mary Quant.
For Mary Quant. Who were your beauty references at that time?
You mean who gave me a reference for that job?
No. Who were like your beauty inspirations?
Oh, well, Mary Quant, of course. For those of you who don't know who she is, look her up tonight. She has a big exhibition actually coming up at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London this summer, and they interviewed me to share my experiences of working with her. She was one of my fashion icons. She invented the miniskirt. And Vidal Sassoon, of course, the 5-point geometric cut. Barbara Hulaniki, who established Biba on Kensington High Street. It was the 70s, and it was an amazing decade to be sandwiched between the 60s and the 80s. And it was great, yeah, that's my...
And what brought you from London to South Africa?
Well, again, this all sounds like I don't pay too much attention to important things. I promise you I do. But I was in London, I was working for Mary Quant, and I really loved it. But it was absolutely freezing cold. It was the winter of 1976. It's the coldest winter on record in Britain. And I had a boyfriend. I'm in my apartment, my flat. and it was freezing, and you had to feed a gas meter to turn the heating on, and I'd run out of quarters, 25-cent things, in British money. And he said to me, I'm absolutely freezing. I said, me too. And we're reading the Sunday papers. He said, what is the hottest place on earth? So I turned to the weather pages and I said, it's 119 in Johannesburg, South Africa. This was February. And he said, oh my God, I wish I was in Johannesburg, South Africa. I said, me too. I turn over the page and right in front of me is an advertisement from the South African government saying that if you fulfill one of the job criteria, the jobs that they're looking to recruit for, they will give you an assisted passage to emigrate for 2 years. So I read out this advertisement to my then boyfriend who's a hairdresser, who said, we should totally go for it. And I said, do you think they want hairdressers and skin therapists? And he said, let's call them tomorrow. And the next day was Monday, the salons were closed. We called up South African Embassy in London and they said, we have 10 professions training that we're hiring. So I said, okay, I'm in a call box. I said, okay, what are they? And we're laughing because we thought they were going to say doctors and dentists or something. So she says, well, the first one is a butcher. So I said, okay, well, we're not butchers. So she said, the second one is a patisserie. I said, whoa, patisseries? No, we're not patisseries. So then she said, hairdressers. I said, hairdressers? We've got one of those here. and then she said, beauty therapist. I said, okay, we'll to get an appointment, please. And we did it. 6 weeks later, I was on a flight to Johannesburg. I know. I believe something that Steve Jobs said, which was, pay attention. The dots all join up. Just keep making the dots on paper. When it feels right, when you think, I'm going to go for that, even if it seems a bit random, just make the dot on the paper, because ultimately, it all joins up.
You already know something about when you see a younger person that just sort of gets up and moves. A lot of you have sort of moved across the world to come here. It says a lot about you. And if a parent, you'd be like, yeah, I don't have to worry about that one anymore. If you can plop somebody down in a different country, they speak the same language typically, but it's a big deal. And as a younger person, you're just like, I'll do it. But when you look back in life, it's probably something you're very proud of, that you were that open to that. Yeah, I am. And I also went because I had a training and I felt quick to work. I might have been more cautious. I probably would. Well, no, I wouldn't have been. But I should have probably been a bit more cautious if I didn't know that I could work as soon as I got there. I knew I could get a job. And so you were there, I think, for 2 years? 4 years. 4 years. 4 years total. Okay. And then what brought you to the U.S. from South Africa? And just tell us about that transition, because I want to talk about sort of that mentality of coming to the U.S. Well, look, when I'm growing up in the UK, it's an island, and it's expected that you're going to travel pretty much. At least my mum said that, travel. She went to India when she was 19, so my mother was, quite a rebel. So she said, you've got to travel, it broadens your mind, it's the most important thing you'll ever do, you've got to go. Okay, fine. So off I go to South Africa. But the golden ticket was definitely the United States. It just seemed completely out of reach to me. I mean, everyone just talked about it's impossible to get into America. It's so difficult, green card, all that. So I didn't even think about emigrating to the US. So South Africa, with the ad in the paper, I thought, okay, great. After I'd been in South Africa for a few years, I thought, okay, I definitely want to do something else. I'm not ready to go back to the UK yet. And I actually applied to Australia. And Australia turned me down. Good job, right? But I really, and it wasn't because I really loved the idea of Australia, but I thought, I'll move to the next place. They turned me down because they had a point system, and I didn't have a university degree, and I didn't speak a second language, so I missed out on the points, and I didn't get it. So that was a good thing, but at the time, it was pretty devastating, because I remember saying, I usually can make something happen. And then I started working for an American company called Redken, which was privately owned and based in Los Angeles then, owned by Paula Kent Meehan and Jerry Redding, and they were based in Canoga Park. So I started working for them and I got promoted, and they offered me a trip to come to LA to do some extra training, to take back that training back to South Africa and train the team there. So I came. So while I was here, I just thought, I'm going to see an immigration attorney and see what the deal is getting into the States. Now, I was dating my boyfriend
who then became my husband many years later, and he had got a green card to come into the States. So I thought, okay, I'm definitely going to try and get this. So I met with an immigration attorney in Century City at 5 o'clock in the afternoon for a consultation, which is $50. And I said to him, I'm not leaving your office until we figure out a way that I can get a visa and come back and work here legally. And he said, well, it could take a while. And I said, I'm not leaving your office until we can figure out a way. I repeated it. And I left his office at midnight. Yeah. And figured it out. Came in on an L1 visa. And that translates to a green card after 5 years. It was a bit more complicated than that, but it was a long story. But eventually, after 23 years of being here, I got my American citizenship and was very proud. But I was just determined. I was definitely coming here and working. Yes.
You can see that, and there's a couple more pictures that you...
Oh, that was when we started the International Dermal Institute. My name before I got married was Martin, so that is me on the left. I was 24 years old when we started the company. I don't know if I was 24 in that photo. I'm 24 here. This was our first office in Marina del Rey. That's as big as it was. That photograph was taken from the doorway. It was 1,000 square feet. It didn't have a window. And it was the cheapest rental in Marina del Rey. And there's no magic to that location study. I had to walk to work, and I lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Marina del Rey. So that was the closest, and it was next door to the Social Security office. So that was our first classroom where I was going to teach people upskill training on being a skin therapist.
So before that, I want you to share your experience of coming here, going to the salons at the time, whether there were more hair, whether there were more skin, and what opportunity did you see that wasn't, the opportunity and what needs weren't being met by America's version of the salon?
So I came here and I thought, okay, I'm going to get a job in a salon, it shouldn't be a problem. And I started looking, where I was going to interview. And the first thing that struck me as odd was there was a hair salon on every corner, but I couldn't see any skincare centers. And the ones I found were all in Beverly Hills, and they were all owned by European women. Georgette Klinger, Christine Valmet, Ida Tibion, and Ida Gray. And so I thought, that's kind of unusual. Anyway, I go for interviews. I call up and I say, I'm qualified, I've got my training, and are you looking to hire? And yes, come in for an interview. So I go in, and typically in our industry, you go in, you have an interview, you do a trade test, a skill set training thing. So you do a skincare treatment and they check out your technique, and then, that's the interview. So I go through that, and the first question I have is, why am I hearing everyone has a European accent? Why are there no Americans working here? And what I learned through the interview process in these several salons was that the American training was so minimal that they couldn't be hired to give a great skincare treatment. So what was the training? The training was 600 hours. That's about 4 months for the cosmetician license as it was then. And my training had been a 2-year full-time with a 1-year apprenticeship. So I thought, okay, well, that's a bit of a gap. And then dug in a little further and realized that the training was inadequate to actually earn a living and charge a decent amount of money for the service. So the big opportunity was clearly going to be in education, in filling that gap between the 600 hours and the international standard of training, which meant that you could actually build a career. So that's what I set out to do, bridge that gap. And that was the classroom that we opened to do it in.
So product didn't come first, the service and the need came first.
Yes.
And didn't I see that you saw that the Americans were at the front desk selling, and that the Europeans were in the back delivering the services,
That's right. And I asked the one owner, I said, why are there Americans in the front and Europeans in the back? She said, because the Europeans don't know how to sell and the Americans don't know how to give a skincare treatment. So I thought, okay, well, bingo. So when I set up my classroom, I thought I'm going to teach definitely skincare techniques, but I'm also going to teach retailing and selling techniques, which I had learned when I worked for Mary Quant and Redken. So it was putting together this curriculum that didn't just teach the skills, it taught how to run a salon, how to handle your PR, how to build a client base, how to sell a product. And most salons then didn't sell product at all. They didn't retail any product. The product was sold in a department store or a drugstore. And I told the salons that they should sell products because 50% of your revenue as a skin therapist comes from the product sale, 50% from the service. If you're a hairstylist, it's a little different. It's 90% service, 10% product. And if you're a nail technician, it's 98% service and hardly any product. But I knew those profit models because I've been in the industry my whole life and I built client bases. And so I said, you've got to sell a product. And the student said to me, which product? And I said, what product are you using now? And they told me, all of them told me European products from France, Italy, and Germany. So they were bringing these products in and paying, customs and import taxes, etc. And I was like, why aren't you using an American product? And they said, which one? And I said, I don't know of one. There must be one. You see, you have to remember that this was 1986. So products were either sold in department stores or in drugstores or in salon professional or direct selling like Mary Kay, Amway, and Avon. So there was no other place that you were selling a product. It was extremely channel driven. And so there were plenty of American products in those other channels, but in the salon professional space, there were no American products. So that clearly was the huge opportunity. We were going to develop a product.
So 2 opportunities, one leading to the next. But
Yes.
the first one I want to just have you focus on for a second. So the International Dermal Institute is the training company that sort of provides a bridge to training, making them more financially independent and running their own salons. I think it was about how much to start? How much startup money did you need for that one?
Oh,
Minimal?
well, minimal. I mean, we wanted to cover our rent. The rent in Marina del Rey was about $1,000 a month because it was $1 a foot. So it was about $1,000 a month. Raymond was working as a sales rep. He was making enough to cover our apartment rent and food, and all the class money was going back into paying the rent and the overhead in the 1,000 square feet. So it was minimal. And I was teaching every place I could. I was teaching at trade shows. I did a video series and was selling that. I was selling books. I was you name it, and we were hustling.
How did you acquire your first customers? I want them to hear this. The very first customers that you invited to train.
So we set up the training room. My husband, Raymond, he got a job selling skincare equipment. So we went to them and we told them we wanted to set up this classroom, and we asked them to put the equipment in and give us 6 months to pay. After I started getting students, I also told them that we would like to use us as a showroom, and we weren't going to pay for the equipment. They were going to have to leave it there as a showroom, and they agreed because our classes were full. And the way I got those students was, I thought to myself, well, if there is a license, which there was, there must be a list of all the people that have a license, because you have to put your license up in the salon, and it's issued by the State Board of Cosmetology. So I got the phone number for the State Board of Cosmetology in Sacramento, and I called them up on the telephone, and I spoke to a woman, and I said to her, do you have a complete list of everyone licensed in the state of California to do skincare? And she said, yes. And I said, good. Is that list a public record? And she said, yes. And I said, can you sell me the list? And she said, I don't know. No one's ever asked me that. So I said, well, can you find out? And I'll call you back tomorrow. And she said, yes. So I called her back the next day and I said, did you find out you could sell me the list? And she said, yes, I can. And it's $25. So I said, that's great. And she said, would you like me to put it on Avery labels? And I said, yes, please. And she shipped it to me. So for $25, I had the mailing address of everyone licensed in the state of California to give a skincare treatment. And I sent them out a postcard saying, here I am, and this is my qualification. And I had a teaching degree and credential in skincare. And this is my classroom, and pictures of that, and waited. And 70 people registered for a class at $100 each within about a week. And it just kept coming. I mean, the demand was huge. And then I was getting people sending me checks from Nevada and Arizona because they'd heard from friends of theirs that were licensed in California that there was a postgraduate training center being set up, and it just rolled from there. So I started off teaching small classes for the equipment company, and then it quickly rolled into us opening our own center. And that was all within the first year of me being in the States. So December 1983, we opened the International Dermal Institute. And in January of 1986, we launched Dermalogica.
And you've referenced your then boyfriend, Raymond. You guys decided to go into business together, which has advantages and disadvantages. How long was your business plan? The length of it and
how many
pages?
I think it was 3 pages. It might have been 5 because we drew on bits of it as well. Raymond sat down and wrote our business plan on yellow legal pad at our kitchen table. And the way we came up with the business plan, we went to San Diego. I was asked to come and train at La Costa Spa, which was one of the big spas. It was before there were day spas and things like that. And I got there and they wanted me to train 90 people in one evening. I trained 90 people in a couple of days. And on the drive back from San Diego, we were talking about this idea that there's this huge demand for education. And then, of course, there was huge demand for product. And after that, and we just cooked it up on that 2.5-hour drive from San Diego, what that would look like. And then once we started teaching, we then added a couple of pages to the business plan to include product. And we launched Dermalogica. And the Harvard Business Review wrote a piece on us. It doesn't sound very flattering because it was their cover story called Bottom Feeders, which is really kind of rude. However, the point was well taken because what they said in the Harvard Business Review was that we had spotted an opportunity in a market that everyone else was ignoring, and that was true. All the big players were ignoring the salon professional market because it was too fragmented, it was too sort of difficult to find. No one could really thought there was an industry or a business there because they weren't selling product. They didn't see it as a product opportunity, and we did. And we put together the range because in my head I knew what product I wanted. I've been in the industry my whole life. And Raymond has a brilliant marketing brain, and he had a marketing degree from the University of Cape Town. And so we sat down and we literally sketched out our dream sort of product and our dream way of distributing it, and we launched it in January 1986.
You've heard, many people talk about how they launched the business. Not only do you need to know the customer, in her case, she was the customer.
Yeah.
And a lot of these products were driven by the customer telling them what they needed. When you launched Dermalogica, how many products did you launch with initially?
Right out the gate, we launched with 27 products, and we put it together formula to finish in 9 months, which I will tell you is crazy. And now Dermalogica probably takes us 1.5 years to get one product out. I mean, it was really hectic, but it's such a long story to tell even how we found a chemist, because first of all, we had no money. We had $14,000 to invest. We started Dermalogica on $14,000 of self-funding, and we never gave away any equity, and we never took outside funding the entire way through to acquisition by Unilever. They couldn't believe it that we owned the company 100% and there was no debt. I mean, highly profitable. So we sat down and we found a chemist by literally calling the Society of Cosmetic Chemists book, and no one would even meet with us because we had no money to pay them. And then I talked to a friend of mine who'd been a chemist at Redken, and he recommended that we start calling ingredient suppliers who were working with botanical ingredients, because that was going to be the base of Dermalogica, to find out what chemists were using those raw materials in LA. That's how we found our chemist. I started calling those numbers, whittled it down to, well, I made about 70 calls, and I think about 10 actually wanted to speak to us. Whittled it down to the 5 that would meet with us, the 3 that weren't crazy, and then the 1 that would actually agree to make the product for us on a basis. We cut a deal with him to pay him a percentage of the manufactured cost of the product, not the top line sale of the product. So we worked it out that we weren't going to be paying a lot of money if the product was not successful. So we worked it out on a percentage of the cost of manufacturing. And we made the product, and I pushed hard to get the submissions from him, and he would come in and see me every few days with submissions and samples that he was making on his bench as a bench chemist. And in 9 months, we put together 27 formulas and launched them.
And people think you have to have your pitch down for just investors. You're pitching people all the time. You're pitching people to join you. You're pitching people to produce for you. They didn't have the money to persuade a manufacturer who's not going to do small runs probably to do a very small run of products, and it's because it's just not likely to work out. But he believed in you.
Yeah, we went to see contract manufacturers. First of all, we didn't want to use private label because ultimately we knew that if we were going to become a global brand, I know this sounds crazy that we were talking like this, but we were. If we were going to be a global brand, we had to own the formulas. We couldn't use private label and just market it properly because you don't own the actual product. So we said, we're not going to do private label. As tempting as it is, we're not going to do it. We're going to develop our own formulas because we also wanted to make them unique. No mineral oil, no lanolin, no SD alcohol. We were more well known for what we left out than what we put in. And this is a time when no one was talking about clean cosmetics. Nobody was talking about ingredients. So we had to develop these formulas because they were going to be unique. So then the minimum run from all the contract manufacturers was a minimum of 500 units for each piece. Well, we couldn't possibly run 500 units of each formula. We had 27 formulas. So we went to meet with a contract manufacturer called Gordon Labs, which was in El Segundo, and we met with the owner. We literally begged him to give us half an hour of his time. And we told him what we were doing. We told him about the training we were doing. We told him about our formulas. I showed him, the sample formulas that we'd had made by the bench chemist. And I said, we need you to run this product. And he said, it's 500 units. And we said, we can't do 500 units. I need you to make enough product for us to go on a trade show in 2 months' time. I just need you to make 25 of each product so I can give out samples and I can show the product on the trade show. I mean, we've emigrated here. We're trying to pursue the American dream. I mean, it'll take you nothing to do this on the bench. It'll take one of your chemists 2 hours to do this. I've got all the formulas. I just need you to make, I was just going. And he just leaned back and he smiled and he said, I must have, hundreds of people a year sitting in front of me making this pitch. And I said, I know, but you haven't had us making the pitch. And he said, I know I have no reason to think that you're going to be successful because 98% of small businesses like this are not. But for some reason, I believe in you. I'll do it. And I said to him, you will never regret it, and I will thank you in every time I talk about it. So thank you, Morgan Gaffney of Gordon Labs.
There was also someone along the way we'll skip the chemist who didn't believe at one point. And
the chemist that made the product, a month before we're launching, calls us up and said he wants to meet with us. Why? Because he actually has decided that he doesn't think we're going to be successful because we have no experience in America and marketing in the States. So he would like to be paid out now and will not hand us over the formulas to give to the contract manufacturer until we pay him out. And there was no way we could pay him. We had no money. And so we literally scraped together everything that we were going to pay for that first run of products. And over a coffee at a Coco's Diner in Compton, we literally exchanged the check for the formulas. And we had brought with us someone from the contract manufacturer to look at the formulas so that they weren't the fake formulas. And he looked at it and said, this looks right, and that was it. So we were devastated. We just thought we are just running this on a shoestring. Now it's kind of crazy, but it was actually the best day of our lives because we had the formulas for much less than we would have had to pay.
I'm smiling for a couple reasons. One, because of the story, but two, we had similar meetings in that exact same Coco's. My sister and I, our business was in Rancho Dominguez right there in Compton. And so Coco's like the only place around that you can eat.
Yeah, exactly. And the crazy thing is we're in Rancho Dominguez now.
Yeah, we were on Harcourt, which is right off. And Yeah, so I had
They just tore that Coco's down.
oh my God.
I know, it was an icon. It was an icon.
Moment of silence.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to eat around there.
Nothing. There's tummy stuffers sandwiches.
Yeah, and there's a Subway and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but not the healthy organics. But the second reason I'm smiling is because, here's a chemist who's, an expert with probably a lot of degrees.
Yeah.
Is telling you you're not going to make it. How did you and Raymond sort of persevere some of those times when maybe people didn't believe in you, and how did you either support each other or just keep your attitude moving forward?
No plan B. There was no backup plan. It had to work. It had to work. If it didn't work, we had to pack up and go home. I mean, literally leave the country to go to our other homes in other countries, because we had no plan B. I mean, we were all in at that stage. This had to work. It was just self-repeated enthusiasm. That was it. We would just continue to see it. We knew the gap in the market was there. We absolutely knew that we had hit it right. And if we could just get that first traction and those first few accounts that would buy the product, we felt absolutely sure that we could make it, we could do it.
Yeah, these inflection points in life, you just remember them forever.
Yes.
And like they were yesterday. I'll bet you this has not been rehearsed, I'll bet you if I ask you your first customer, your first account, you probably know his or her name.
Becky Sinclair from Pizzazz in Bakersfield, California.
When people believe in you early, you never forget it.
Oh my God, it was everything. It was everything. I said, Becky, I'd like to tell you that I'm not going to cash this check, but I have to because we're broke. We launched at a trade show and we said it was a $1,500 opening order to take the line. I mean, it was incredibly arrogant when you think about it, but we needed $1,500 from 10 people to be able to run that line at Gordon Labs for the first proper run of the product. So we had a 3-day trade show and we got $1,500 checks. We needed 10 accounts in the 3 days of the show, and we opened 10 accounts in 3 hours. And we did $1 million in our first year.
You're off and running. $1 million in your first year. You ultimately spread internationally, I think, to train 100,000.
We now train 100,000 skin therapists every year around the world. We're the #1 provider of education and also the #1 product.
And by 2014, I believe you're doing somewhere around $240 million in revenue.
Yeah, wholesale.
Wholesale, yeah. So let's talk 2015. We want to talk Unilever, and then we want to pivot and talk about Fight. So in 2015, you and Raymond, I don't believe have ever really entertained selling the company.
No.
What factors went into that thought process of when it was why the time was right for you personally in your lives, and why was Unilever the right partner?
Well, we've grown the company from the United States. We grew throughout the States. We grew internationally. We're in 106 countries. We've got an incredible tribe of skin therapists that are fiercely loyal to the brand. And we're highly profitable. The salon industry is a COD business. It's cash on delivery, largely. So we were cash positive pretty much right away. And so this was, a dream project, and we lived it and dreamed it, and it was fantastic. And we, at some point, were going to have to decide what was going to happen to the company. So over the years, many of our competitors had approached us. We used to call them the usual suspects. They would call us up and they'd try and get through to us, and they'd say, we want to, have dinner or discuss matters of mutual interest. There's no mutual interest. You're a competitor and we're not meeting you for dinner, because we didn't want to sell. I mean, we were not in it to flip it. We didn't start the company to flip. That's a different kind of entrepreneur. We were in it for the long game. We were in it because we were making a difference in an industry we cared about. We became a major job creator because the salons that were using us were successful in hiring people. I mean, so we had this huge social responsibility to the people that supported the product. And we felt that very, very keenly. So we were not looking to sell. And listen, at some point, you're running out of runway. The death rate holds steady at 100%, right? So, I mean, at some point you have to say, okay, listen, what are we going to do here? So Raymond had said to me, we should stop talking about it. We have 2 daughters. We said to each other, whatever happens, when they were babies, we said, whatever happens, the girls are not coming into the company. Because we both feel that to take over a legacy business from your parents or your family is an incredible burden. And we felt that if they have a dream to have their own skincare company, that's great, and we'll help them, and we'll introduce them to all our contacts, etc. But it isn't Dermalogica, because we wanted them to have their own dreams. I've always believed you follow your passion, you follow your heart. So if I believe that, I can't say to my own children, but not you two, you're going to follow what we did. We just felt it was not right. So that wasn't going to happen. So ultimately, it was going to be, what are we going to do? We didn't need to get out. We didn't need to bring in a partner. We were highly profitable. We didn't need funding, so we weren't looking for any of that. We didn't need, somebody said, go public. Well, we don't play well in the sandbox. So, I don't want to report to anybody. And to try and think of reporting to shareholders is going to be a bloody nightmare. So we said, no, that's not going to work. So ultimately, we said it's going to be an acquisition. And the worst 5 years of my life, of my career, were the 5 years that we agonized over whether we should do it or not. We felt hugely responsible to our team. I can't even look at Natalie from Dermalogica over there, because it's just going to, I'm going to start crying if I look at you, because everyone was just so loyal, and it was just an incredible, it is still an incredible company. And so who were we going to have as the person that was going to acquire the company? Anyway, we decided we're going to do it. We just had 5 years went by. And the trouble is, in the 5 years that we were like, should we, shouldn't we? We weren't playing the big game. We should have been making the investment to grow for the next 10 years. And we knew what we would do if we had the company for another 10 years, but we were deciding, okay, listen, we're not going to, unless we still want to be doing this when we're 90. That's not going to work. So we have to, stop vacillating, because the company growth was slowing. We were growing at a rapid pace, and we were leveling because we weren't making the decision. So it wasn't fair to the company or the people. So we said to each other, okay, let's do it. So we met with a guy that lived across the street, who was the lead partner of Skadden Arps.
Big law firm.
I know, right. So he said, come and have breakfast with us and tell us what you think. And he told us how it would go. He told us what the process was. We thought about it for a little while. We said, okay, we're going to do it. We met with Mullis, who was our bank here in LA. We wanted an LA bank. And they said, you're going to do a book, and you're going to talk, so we won't name the company, and the book will go, well, it's terrible. We said, no, we're not doing any of that. What? No, not doing a book. Everyone's going to know it's us. Don't be silly. That's going to get out. No, we're not going to do. They said, well, how do you think you're going to, we're going to market it? And we said, well, we know who the usual suspects are, because they've been calling us for years. We want to, we called it our whisper campaign. We said, we want a whisper campaign. And they said, what is that? And we said, we want someone, we'll work out who it is in a minute. We want someone to just get the word to the CEO of these companies. We had 8 companies in our mind, that we might be thinking about something. And they said, that's not going to work. We said, no, it is going to work. You've got to trust us, it is. So we said, these are the 8 companies, and we went through them, and they said, okay. And it was kind of crazy, because we said, okay, who knows, we knew who all the CEOs were. Who knows this person? Who can get a word to that person? And one of the people in the bank said, well, I'm on the board at Penn with that person. I said, okay, well then you're it, and you're going to, next meeting, you're going to tell them, I'm in LA, and I know the Wurwands, and I think they might be thinking of something. Don't say anything more. I know, and honestly, within 3 weeks, we had calls from every single one of them. And the most eager ones said they're on a flight from Paris tomorrow, and they will meet with us in LA. And that's how we did it. So this was our thing. We said, okay, the first meet, we're not meeting with anyone from M&A. We want to meet with the CEO, and we want to have dinner. That's it. It's a dinner. We're not talking numbers. We're not revealing anything. We just want to have dinner. And the reason for it was we wanted to see if we had a matched value system. And that was really important to us, because we had a loyal following, not just in Dermalogica, but of our salons around the world. and our distributors who had agreements with us, some of whom had literally slept on friends' couches because they sold their homes to be able to become a distributor for one of the key countries for Dermalogica. They were all in. There was no way that we were going to go with a company whose first question was, how long are the distributor contracts and how quickly can we get out of them? And that was one of the first questions from one of the people. So that was how it went. So why Unilever? Well, Unilever was not necessarily at top of the list because Unilever were not in prestige skincare. They were in mass. But we admired Paul Polman, who was the CEO then, very much because he had introduced the Sustainable Living Plan at Unilever, which was all about becoming carbon neutral by 2020 and by getting out of a lot of the controversial areas that most cosmetics were involved with. So Paul called us and said, can I come to lunch, not a dinner? So we said, sure. So he came out to LA. He flew commercial to LA from Austin, Texas, where he'd been staying in an Airbnb because his son loves music. And they went to a music festival there. He took an Uber from LAX. He came to Dermalogica, and we brown bag lunched it, just the three of us. And the first thing he said to me as he came in through the door, he came on his own, didn't have anyone with him. And we shook hands, and he said, Jane, I'm a little obsessed with FIGHT. And I said, good, because I'm a little obsessed with it too. And FIGHT is our social impact initiative, financial independence through entrepreneurship. And that was what we talked about the whole lunch. We didn't talk about the product. He didn't ask us anything about the money. We didn't discuss anything. He said, you have a beautiful brand, and you're going to make the right decision, and you're going to make the right decision with who it is. And we said, fine. And off he went. And that was it. And we sat and talked about it. And when I went back into the room with Raymond, he said, I think we found them. And I said, yeah, me too. And that was it. And so, yes, of course, we were in conversation with a number of people, and there was a bidding war. And we hoped it would be Unilever, and it was. Because apart from a very compelling financial offer, they promised to create 5 million new jobs for women through their supply chain. And that was in their bid letter. So that was it. Oh, there we are, marching. That was marching in New York for FIGHT. Natalie, I think you're in there holding a placard.
Whether you're interviewing for someone to join your company, your startup, or whether you're auditioning people to invest in you or to acquire your company, culture is probably before even skills. Is would this person or does this company fit?
Yeah.
Particularly when you've got such a strong connection to the people that are going to carry on and run the company and have been with you and helped build it. My sister felt the same way. I mean, just really feels like she owes so much of her life to the people that helped build the company.
Yeah.
I want to finish before I turn over to the students with you introducing Found LA.
Yeah.
And what that does. Should we play the video first, or?
Let me talk about it first. So it's been an incredible journey in my career. I've played that big game of scaling a company to be a global brand. And I know what that looks like, and it's incredibly exciting. But I also know along the way, all those small entrepreneurs that built Dermalogica, all those salon entrepreneurs that built it. And I've been that small entrepreneur that self-funded on $14,000. And so after the acquisition, Raymond and I determined that we wanted to do something impactful, not just on a global scale, which is where we'd been operating previously, but on a local scale. And especially in Los Angeles, because this is the city that we started in. This is the city we've lived in since we started. And I honestly don't believe that there's any other city in the world that we could have started our business in. I can't even tell you how exciting it was in the 80s, the early 80s, to start a business and grow it in California. There was something starting, there was something in the air, there was something feral that was the most exciting place on the planet. And we didn't know it was tech then. Now we know what it was, but it all seemed to be happening in California. And there was just something super exciting in the air. And so we feel that way about LA again, actually. And so we said we want to do something impactful in Los Angeles. And we want to focus on local small entrepreneurs. Because even though we think of these big global companies like Dermalogica, it is the small local entrepreneurs that make a difference in the neighborhoods and the communities that we live in. We all want to be part of a neighborhood and a community that has those businesses. We all want to shop local. We want to go to that local bakery. We want to go to that local dog groom or the florist or the salon or the restaurant or whoever it is, because that's what makes it a great place to live. And that's what we're looking for. And those entrepreneurial businesses are the glue of our community. And I know that from every salon I've ever been in. And so we set about establishing a nonprofit initiative called Found LA. And it's really about all those small entrepreneurs needing support with a special focus on women, minorities, and immigrants. And we want to help support them to grow their business, be more successful, get funded, and get going. So I brought, not only did I bring our fantastic director of Found LA, Marsha Olson, but I also brought to show you a small clip of the work that we're doing in Los Angeles.
Hi, my name's Diana. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us today. I'm wondering how you pick the entrepreneurs that you choose to support with Found LA.
So we pick the entrepreneurs that we choose to support. We have partnerships for funding and screening, and one is with the Opportunity Fund, who are the largest funder nationally for people who generally aren't getting funded anywhere else by banks, etc., typical banks. We've also partnered with the Los Angeles Mayor's Office, and Found LA uses the Opportunity Fund, will take entrepreneurs who are looking for funding, looking for support. They present them to us, and then we sit down and screen them and look at them. And we've also got a call out right now for other partners to tell us about entrepreneurs that are looking to be funded and looking to be supported. And funding is one aspect, but it's also about support and community building. And I know from all the salons that we've ever worked with that their number one issue is a lack of support and a lack of connection, a lack of knowing where to find the resources that they need to be able to support their business. And so Found LA, and you'll see on the website, is also a resource for all of that too. So to connect people to the right resources, because sometimes it's not just money, it's not just funding, but it's also connection and support from other entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for coming over here.
Hey.
My question to you is, there's so many new skincare brands coming out, and it seems like you were a pioneer. So what are your thoughts on this rapid growth? Because there's something honestly coming out every single day now, but it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, every minute. You see, the difference now is it's extraordinary, of course, because of all the communication platforms that we have, that we're aware of everything. I mean, there always were a lot of brands being developed. It's just that we never usually ever heard of them because you just wouldn't know about them. Even today, and I don't know if she's in the room, is January in the room? Hey! Okay, so I was coming, this is a side story, but this morning I went to my usual Pilates class in Santa Monica. I'm coming out of the classroom, and January came up to me and said, "Excuse me, are you speaking at USC tonight?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "I'm going." And I said, "How crazy?" Because we were just in this class with 9 people. It wasn't like a huge class. And she said, not only that, but
Seeing you made me, I'm like, well, I have to go now.
yeah, she said, "I saw you and now I have to go," because she wasn't sure if she wanted to fight the traffic, which was bloody awful, wasn't it, getting in? But January, thank you, January has her own skincare line, January Labs. But you see, before an online platform or social media or the internet, how would we ever have even known about that? You would have had to go out January like we did and literally find people to say, "Hello, I have a skincare line." Because when we launched Dermalogica, there was no internet. I know that sounds like it was when dinosaurs roamed the earth, but it was 1986. There was no internet. So you could not reach anybody. You literally had to stick a stamp on a piece of paper and mail it to somebody, or sit on the phone with a yellow page phone book and call everyone with a yellow page ad and try and sell them something. That's how basic it was. And you could do it. We did it. Other people did it too. It seems overwhelming now because we're just aware of everything. Is there a gap? I mean, does the world need another cleanser? And I said this to January this morning. No, the world does not need another cleanser, nor do we need another serum, which incidentally, I have to just say, Dermalogica was the first company to ever use the word serum on a skincare product. It was 1987. It doesn't need another one. We've got more than enough. Thank you. However, what the world does need are great brands that don't just have a product. They have a product that's got a unique message. They have a product that's different. They have a product that's exciting. They have a product that's got a purpose. And they have a product that's got a voice. I think if all you've got is a product, it's not enough. And it never was. I think if you've got a product that's great, good, that gets you out the starting gate. But you better have more than just a product. When we launched Dermalogica, was it a great product? Yeah, I think it's the best product in the world. But again, you'd expect me to say that. But what we had was we were building a community. We were building a community of skin therapists that we were training. We were saying, you are going to be outrageously successful. I am, and this is exactly how I would say it, I'm going to drag you kicking, screaming, and biting, if necessary, to your optimum level of success. Because if you're not successful in your business, I have no one to sell a product to. So you better be damn successful. And I mean, we would laugh about it in class, but the students don't. I would say that to them. And I would say to them, this product is your vehicle. It's going to be 50% of your revenue. And that's why you need a product. And you need the best product because that client is not coming back if they don't get results on their skin. But it's not just about the product. And so I would just say to any of you who are looking at consumer goods, because all I know is prestige consumer goods. I don't know anything about tech other than the fact that I use it. I don't know anything about any other industry. I know prestige consumer goods, specifically skincare, because we had no makeup, no fragrance, no nails. We're 100% focused on skin because that was a point of difference for us too. Everyone else was getting distracted by the next bright, shiny thing. Oh, I've got to have a glitter eyeshadow. I've got to have a lip plumper. Oh my God, I guess I have to have a self-tanner. Oh my goodness, I need hair products and nail products. No, you don't. You could just introduce one thing and it could be great. Oil of Olay started with one product and had that one product for years before it expanded. P&G got hold of it and blew it up into a big red happening in Target. But that was different for decades before that. So all I would say is, how do you get noticed? It's never been easy. It's easier now than it ever was, and yet there's so much noise that it seems overwhelming. But my goodness, we've got companies now. Look at Kylie Cosmetics, billion-dollar brand online, pretty much. So that wasn't even imaginable back then. I think it's easier now than ever, but you have to have more than a product. You have to have a message that resonates with a target group that's willing to buy it. Yeah. And dig for that. Dig for that sense of purpose. Don't make it a bolt-on. Don't say, oh, well, look, we'll just add this on. We'll say that's our purpose. It's got to be something truly authentic to your brand, to you, to your voice. It has to be real, because I think people can spot a fake purpose in 30 seconds.
Hi, my name is Justine. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So you were talking about how when you went from formula to finish with Dermalogica and the product, it only took you 9 months. And that seems like pretty fast for the scale that you were trying to reach with that product. What kind of mindset did you have when going into that development phase? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, I feel like, are kind of impeded by the obsession with making their product perfect before they decide to launch it. So what mindset did you have, and what became most important to you when you did face those roadblocks down the road after launching your product?
That's a great question. The reason we could do it so fast was we had an approval committee of one, and that was me. You can't do creative by committee. Because what happens, it's not that you won't get a result, but I think you often get a more mediocre result than if you have a very small, tight group. Because you start to try and please everyone in the group to get a consensus. So you sort of start off, I always say that it's a little bit like breakfast. You know, you go in thinking, you want huevos rancheros. That's a pretty bold choice. Most people are going to say, I'll take the oatmeal because it's the least offensive thing on the menu, right? But it's not the most exciting. So go for the huevos rancheros. You know, that's what I say. Just don't order that oatmeal. Just refuse. Say, I'm going to have huevos rancheros and a double espresso. Thank you. And I think, so what was happening was I was briefing the chemist. He was coming back with these little, you know, sort of bottles. And I knew in my head, I can see a formula finished. Once I get it in my head, I can see it completely finished. Okay, so it's a light cream. It feels more like a gel when it gets on the skin. It's got a quick meltdown point. It rinses completely clean with water. And then afterwards, the skin feels like suede silk. I mean, I can see this in my head. I can actually think of that product as a gel cleanser. It doesn't exist, but I'm thinking of it as I'm saying it. And so I think of that product and I know what it feels like and I know what it smells like, and that's the product I want. So now it's like doing a police lineup. I've just got to keep testing it until I get it. And I go, no, this is a cream. No, this feels oily. What's that? No, this one's got like wax in it. I don't like this at all. Okay, this is pretty good. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's better. No, but it's too runny. See how it's just running off? The melt point's too quick. Okay, but something like that and a little more. So it would be this kind of dialogue. And then he would come back with it, and once I had it, I would use it. I'd say, stay here, stay right here. I'd go into the restroom and, cleanse my face. And for one thing, you have to be able to open your eyes when you're cleansing your face. If it stings your eyes, that's no good. Because I want to see what the hell I'm doing. So, and also it was going to be used in a treatment by a skin therapist, and clients open their eyes during a treatment because they're talking. So all of these things are in my head, and so I knew exactly how it had to be. And if it stung my eyes, I'd come out and say, look, everything's great, but it stings. And then, so we go back and forward until we nailed the formula. And then when I thought it was great, it was a go. And when we named the product, I remember Raymond said, we've got to name the products today. And I said, what do you mean? It was a Sunday. He said, today. And I said, 27? And he said, yes. And I said, I thought we had a few months to name them. And he said, no, because we're ordering packaging and we have to get the name on the packaging. So even though we were doing just mock-up packaging, we've got to name it. So I said, okay, so what are we going to do? He said, we're going to name it this afternoon. Call Michael, we'll have him come over. We're going to sit downstairs. We had a one-bedroom apartment. We're going to sit around the pool and we're going to name the product. And we literally, 3 of us, were sitting around the pool. So I said, okay, so this is the moisturizer for a dry skin. What do you think of like skin cream? That's not enough, right? No. Okay, so skin smoothing cream. Skin smoothing cream. And Michael said, what did you say, skin soothing cream? And I said, no, I said skin smoothing cream. But soothing is a good name for that booster thing for sensitive skin. Where's that? Literally, we named 27 products sitting around the pool. Now, were they the best product names we could have come up with? Maybe not, but we went with them. We had to get those names. So it wasn't perfect. But guess what? Skin smoothing cream is still one of our top 10 products. So it wasn't that bad. Right? So, but I know what would happen now at Dermalogica, which is a fabulous company with amazing people in creative and marketing, and it would take us a month to name one because we'd all have a consensus and we'd have to buy in and we'd have to agree, and that's as it has to be in a big company. But when you're starting out, you go with what your gut tells you. Just go with it. What's the worst that can happen? You can change it, right? But ideally you don't want to. Just go with it. We named Dermalogica in an afternoon, the name Dermalogica. I said, it's got to be something sensible, like skin sensible, like logical. It's like skin logical. It makes sense. And Raymond said to me, what's the Latin name for skin? I mean, after a lot of conversation, what's the Latin name for skin? I said, derma. So he said, so it's like dermalogical. And I said, yeah, dermalogical. Is that a word? And he said, no, but I like it without the L, Dermalogica. And I said, I like that too. It sounds pharmaceutical. He said, all right, Dermalogica. I like it, I said, because we wanted it to sound sort of quasi-medical because everything was all about beauty and pampering, and we wanted to be the opposite. And so, Dermalogica. And we registered the name, and it takes about 3 months to get the name registration back. Meanwhile, we've gone forward with packaging, and we've sunk everything we pretty much had then at that stage into the packaging. And we got a cease and desist letter from Procter & Gamble saying that they had a hair care line called Logix, and we couldn't use the name Dermalogica. They were coming against us. Well, that was a problem because we had to have Dermalogica. We had to. So I guess they probably had 72 in-house attorneys, and they kept sending us increasingly aggravated letters, and we just wouldn't back down. We couldn't. There was no plan B. So we just kept saying, no, we're going with it. It's not close enough. And of course, we couldn't possibly have ridden that out on a lawsuit. We didn't have enough money, but we couldn't afford to retain an attorney anyway to fight it. So what the hell? So we just kept saying, no, it's not close enough. Logix, your hair care line, is in the salon industry, but it's not Dermalogica, it's not skincare, and we're not in the hair care business. So no, and we're not backing down. And we didn't back down. And a month before we launched, they just gave up. Thank God.
Here we go.
Hi. Hi, my name is Shira. Thank you so much for coming. I know you touched on this a little, but I wanted to know what it was like to work with your husband or your boyfriend. Did you guys even know you'd have a future together? What if you guys didn't end up together? Like, you started a whole company together. So I kind of want to know where your head was at with that.
This is always what I wish Raymond were here. You know, we could share it together. Yeah. So here's the thing. Raymond was my boy. I was dating a guy who was the smartest person I'd ever met in my life. And I'm married to a guy who's still the smartest person I've ever met in my life. He's a brilliant marketer. We do not see everything the same, but our value systems are aligned. And we saw the vision of this company absolutely together. We saw it completely. Now, did we envisage how we were going to get there exactly the same way? No. And we would have all the way through Dermalogica, and still to this day, we have what we call fierce conversations. We will thrash out and fight out whatever it is that our point of view is. And at the end of it, we will agree, one or the other of us will have persuaded the other one that their point of view is more relevant. That's just kind of how our relationship works. And so it was fantastic. And if I were to start another company tomorrow, I would only do it with him. Just lucked out. He and I see each other. We have great respect for each other. I do think there's a secret to it, though. And this is absolutely unproven and untested, other than completely anecdotally from me. We worked together at Redken in South Africa for 3 years before we dated. So we had established a pretty fierce working relationship because I would not back down from what I thought the brand should be doing, and he was the same. And he was not my boss, he was my boss's boss. And so I would be in meetings that were pretty high level, and I was just there as a brand manager, and I would fight for what I thought was the right thing. And we both respected each other enormously for the positions that we took. So when we started a relationship, we'd already established our working relationship. So I think that tends to work better than if you start the relationship first and then decide you're going to work together. And the reason I say that is, I found and observed that when you've worked together first and then you have a relationship, you tend to bring your work into the relationship, but you don't take your relationship into work. I've also observed that people who start their relationship first tend to bring the relationship into work and don't take the work home. So this is all anecdotal, right? So we would definitely take work home. There is no such thing as work-life balance when you're an entrepreneur. You can just forget that, because it's about, my mum told us, my sisters and I, life's not about balance, it's about resilience. And that's true. Because you can't have balance when you can't control your life. You know, my mum was widowed at 38. She couldn't control that. All she could control was her response to it. So you've got to be resilient. So when Ray and I, people would say, oh my God, do you talk about work at home? Yes, of course we do. We talk about everything non-stop because we have a company together and we're married. Of course, we don't go to the back door and go, oh, no more work now. I mean, what are you kidding me? We can't get those pumps out of Germany. We're going to talk because at 10 o'clock tonight we're calling Berlin and we better have a game plan. So what do you mean no more work now? We never said that. We would talk about it all night long. We love our work. We love the company. We're passionate about it. And we love each other and we're passionate about each other. So the whole thing just got mixed up into something called life. your life isn't about your, people say, you have your career and then you have your life. Well, what are you, dead when you're at work? This is all your life. This is your life. And if you're an entrepreneur, I think you see the whole thing as a big, messy lot of exciting stuff happening. And so I remember, people have said to me, I identify as a woman. People have said to me, over the years, you hear these ridiculous comments like, don't, as a woman, don't cry, don't take your emotion to it, don't be emotional. Are you kidding? You bring your whole self to your work. You bring every piece of your whole crazy self to work. You bring all your emotion, you bring all of your excitement. Don't lock it up, button it up, and leave it at home. Bring it all. That's who you are. And so I think with that attitude, it's a long answer, but that's how we happen to be able to work together. We see it the same way. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Nate. Just wanted to say I really like your sense of humor.
Thank you.
My question was, when you were deciding what those 27 products were going to be, was there a moment where you had to buy a bunch of competing products and use them and think about how your products might be better than those? Or would you say it was more you knew what was out there from being in this industry for so long and you didn't have to spend a ton of money on other people's products?
I didn't have to spend any money on anyone else's products. I knew what was out there. I knew what I liked working with. Because here's the thing, you have to remember, I was using products giving treatments. So I'm working with products, right? I'm literally working on someone's face with products, doing this, which, you learn. You get muscle memory. You don't even need a client there, and you kind of can do it in your sleep. But so I would work with products thinking, this cleanser is way too oily. If I had to redo this cleanser, I would not make it as oily as this. It's slipping all over the place. Look at that. It's like melting down the back of the shoulder. That's disgusting. I mean, I would be having this inner dialogue about product all the time. I'm a product junkie. I still use a ton of product. I mean, I might not use it more than once, but I love product and I like seeing what's out there. And often, so I'm taking off my makeup or whatever before we go to bed. Raymond will be in bed and I will come out from the bathroom and say, I cannot believe someone approved this product. Look at it. And it would be a major brand and it's not a great product. And then other times I'll use a product that's absolutely beautiful. It's gorgeous. And it's a hidden jewel that isn't well known at all, but it's a great product. And, I'll talk about that too. So I think I knew the industry I was coming into. I can't imagine going into an industry that I didn't know anything about. Sometimes, people ask me, often, people in your positions, they'll say, what do you think is the next big opportunity? Or what do you think is the next? Well, I can't tell you anything about any other industry but the one I'm in, because this is the one I know. And I think you have to just know the industry you're going into, because that's where you will spot the opportunity. If you can spot the greatest pain in an industry, you just spotted the greatest opportunity. Whatever the pain is, where's the pain point? If you can solve that, or at least start to solve it, you just got the biggest opportunity in that industry.
That is, speaking of education, that is sort of a master's class in an hour and a half. I want to ask two things, shorter things, and I want to ask the students sort of what they've learned from your talk in a second. But first, I saw one of the professionals that you've trained once thanked you for not shrinking yourself. And I wanted to ask what that meant to you and how you would translate that to advice for 18 to 22-year-olds.
Well, not shrinking yourself means don't ever diminish or make smaller anything about you. Don't think you have to fit some model of what something should be. Don't feel like you're too loud. I need to be quieter. Don't feel you're too energetic. I need to calm down. You probably don't. You're fine as you are. It's all good. We need everything. Oscar Wilde said, be yourself, everyone else is taken. It's true. You are perfect for what you're going to do. Don't diminish or shrink yourself. Refuse to conform to what someone else tells you you should be. Or someone else says, you would do a lot better if you were like this. Or you should learn more about this because you... That kind of conversation, I'm not saying that you shouldn't take criticism or be open to a critique. But anything that says you need to be less of who you are or less of what you want or write the script of your life smaller than you want it to be, that's someone that's trying to diminish you. And to me, that's the person that's going to order oatmeal in the restaurant and you are ordering huevos rancheros.
That is so good. That is so
don't
good.
shrink yourself.
I love that. So I guess I like the full circle. We started with talking about your family and your mother and telling you have to have a skill that you can always rely on.
Yeah.
If all else fails, you can go get a job. Your mom was able to see 15, 16 years of Dermalogica and the impact you were having on the world. Can you share what she thought of your company, your accomplishments, your career at the later parts of her life?
Well, my mum, I'm sure, told me many times in my life, you stay real. Don't fall in love. Don't fall in love with your own publicity because you wrote it yourself. It's true. Stay real. You never forget where you came from. Never lose sight of where you're going, and that piece in between is the exciting piece. My mum passed away. She had Alzheimer's. And the last few months of her life, it was a little sketchy as to whether she really remembered everything. I had great years with her where she was very proud of me and she would tell me that. She never hesitated to tell me that. But one of the last times I was with her, she was in hospital, and when I was in school studying skincare, I learned nails, manicuring techniques as well, and massage and a whole collection of things. And I always used my mum as my model when I was doing my training. And I would give her a manicure every single night and paint her nails every single night because I needed the practice, So anyone that would stand still long enough, I would, wax you, massage you, give you a treatment. So anyway, my mom was in hospital and I was going to give her a manicure and do her nails. So I sat on the edge of her bed and I was, filing her nails, and she was looking at me. And she turned to the lady that was in the bed next to her, and she said to her, "My daughter's a qualified manicurist, And I realized that at that moment, that was what she remembered. And I smiled and I said, "Yeah, I am." And I felt really good that even just in remembering that, she was proud of me. And it started from that. And I felt like she and I had come a full circle. She felt very pleased that I had a training. And I felt very pleased that I had a mum who had told me to learn how to do something. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much.
Let's
Thank you for having me.
Let's think about what we've learned from Jane today. There's so much there. I've admired you for so long, so it's actually a pleasure to look up to you tonight, even again.
Thank you, David.
Physically. What lessons, advice, and quotes are you going to remember from Jane's talk tonight? Who's got a lesson or talk? Ready? I'm going to film this for you.
Oh, thank you.
Ready? Go, speak up. Go ahead.
Life isn't about balance, it's about resilience. Order the huevos rancheros.
You can't do creative by committee.
Build a community.
Be you and bring your full self to work.
You're perfect for whatever you're going to do.
Excellent.
Don't be less of who you are.
Greatest pain is the greatest opportunity.
Coming up.
You can't have balance when you can't control your life. Resilience over balance. A good brand has a voice and purpose.
Work is life. Exciting things are always happening.
Learn how to do something.
Coming around. I miss anybody? Hold on.
Never take no for an answer.
Don't diminish yourself. Be authentic to your purpose. People can spot a fake purpose.
Having no plan B can be a great motivation. It's not about the product, it's about the people.
Say yes, you'll learn how to eventually. The greatest pain point in an industry is the greatest opportunity.
Travel. Never forget where you came from. You can do anything.
There's no separation. Everything, it's your life.
Please, let's thank Jane Wurwand.